Now, one thing you need to keep in mind when we start talking about cell references, remember a cell reference is something like C3 or E10, whatever, it refers to a cell. When you use those in formulas and you start copying formulas from one cell to another, you need to know the difference between absolute and relative references. Absolute and relative references. Most references are relative. For example, if we look right here, this was the formula we used before. Okay, I'm taking, to get this cell, I'm taking and dividing, it says equals B2 divided by G2. Okay. Now, what happens though, if I take that and I copy it, because I want it to be in all of these cells as well. So if I copy that and paste it, notice what happens. I get an error. And the reason for that is if I look at this cell, it says that's equal to B3 divided by G3. There's nothing in G3. What happened is Excel is smart, and so when you copy formulas, it assumes that you want to change the references as well. You notice that when I copy this, I don't want this cell to be B2 divided by G2. I want it to be B3. Okay, and I want this one to refer to B4 and this one to refer to B5. Well, it did all those, it changed those cells, but at the same time it also changed the G2 reference. Okay, because basically what Excel is doing is saying, okay, you just moved everything down one cell here, went down one row here, so let's move this down a row and this down a row. And it's going to do that consistently. So you need to have a way to tell Excel not to do that. And that's where you get into absolute reference rather than a relative reference. An absolute reference means I want you always to refer to a particular cell. No matter where I copy this formula, it's always going to point to a particular cell. So the way you do that in Excel is with a dollar sign. I know that's kind of weird, but that's just how it works. If I want G2 to be an absolute reference, that means it's always going to be G2 no matter where I copy it, I put a dollar sign in front of the G and a dollar sign in front of the 2. Now, sometimes you may want the row to stay the same and not the column, so that's why you do for each of them. I've got a dollar sign in front of the G, a dollar sign in front of the 2. Okay. Now what happens if I copy that formula down through here? Now I don't have that error. You notice, okay, here this says B2 divided by G2. Down here, B3, it changed that, but it kept the G2 the same. Here, B4 divided by G2. It kept that the same all the way down. Okay. Now, there is a shortcut in Excel to do that absolute reference. Okay. If you don't remember it, just remember the dollar signs. Okay. But if you want to use a shortcut, you put your cursor in the middle of the cell reference somewhere in the G2. Okay, so it looks like that. Then press F4. Press the F4 key, the function key, F4. When you do that, it changes that, and it's actually cycling through. If you keep pressing it, notice now the dollar sign is in front of the 2. Now the dollar sign is in front of the G. Now there's no dollar sign. Now I've got a dollar sign for both. So each time you press F4, it changes that. So if you want to make a cell reference absolute, if you just click in the cell reference itself and then press the F4 key, it will change that. So that's when we talk about absolute versus relative cell references, that's what we're talking about. The absolute refers to one particular point. Relative can change when you copy and paste the formulas.